Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this mayoral debate. We're so happy to have you here to hear what our two candidates for mayor in Saline have to say to your questions and others, Glenn Law and Brian Marl. I'm sure most of you know who they are. I'm Ian Reed Twiss. I'm the pastor at Holy Faith Church up the road and the president of the Coalition for a Quality Community. And it's actually in that respect that I stand before you today. CQC, as we call it, had this idea to have this debate and sort of germinated it among us and invited some media partners to help us sponsor this. So before we get started, I just want to thank those folks. We have Tran Longmore of the Saline Post over here covering tonight's event. We have the Saline Community Television Network with Chase Stanton, who is taking video. And for those of you who want to link to the video of this from your Facebook pages, you'll be able to find it at www.sctn.org. That's sctn.org, as in Saline Community Television Network.org. And you can find the videos on a tab on that page. So spread the word about the debate and let others know who weren't able to be here that they can hear and see the entire event on that page. And finally, I also want to thank Jim Pruitt, who's here from the Saline Reporter, also covering the event for us. And those are our three media partners who came together with us at CQC to make this happen. Not a lot of people necessarily know much about the Coalition for Quality Community, so I just want to let you know a little bit about us. We are a coalition that brings together leaders from different sectors of the Saline community, government, schools, religion, of course, businesses, and we meet on a monthly basis to share information and to sort of support things that we're involved in. Some of us are involved in, tell the others, and we're able to sort of help each other out and support each other with a view towards increasing the strength of our community in a variety of ways. One of those ways has included sponsoring some new nonprofits over time who've sort of gotten started under our umbrella and then become their own events or their own nonprofits. Some examples of that. Leslie, can you help me out with that? Saline Leadership Institute, the Sustainability Circle, and PACT now. So a number of community organizations that are working on problems in Saline or on working to make Saline an even better and more vibrant place. So anyway, I want to thank you all for being here, and I do want to let you know that I realize that there are some people who have some idea about seeing some other debate that's happening tonight. I don't really know anything about that, but we will have you out of here by 8:30 so that you can get home and pop your popcorn and get ready for the national version. So I think that's everything. The last person I want to thank before bringing him out is Scott Lem, who will be our moderator today. Thank you so much for coming out and serving in this way, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Lem, and I will be your moderator this evening. Before we get started, I'll share with you a bit of the format and the rules that we'll have tonight. As the audience members, you'll understand our request to be quiet and receptive to the debate that we have going on tonight. No cheering, no jeering. We respect the candidates that they have before you and the comments that they have to make. No side comments to be made. We don't want to stop the debate in the middle just so that we can make sure we have controlled silence and understanding from all of our audience members. The format this evening, you will receive 2 opening comments from each of the candidates. They will last for 2 minutes. Then we will begin our questions. We have 3 questions that the candidates did receive ahead of time, so they will respond to those questions. They'll have approximately 3 minutes apiece. The first person to speak will get an extra 1 minute at the end to rebuttal. We will then open it up to audience questions, some of which we have already received. During the evening, if you have a question you would like to provide, please raise your hand. filled out on one of the cards that we've had handed out, and pass that on to a representative that will come to you, and they'll bring those to me for the questions. For closing, each candidate will have a minute to respond to closing. Before everything started this evening, we explained the rules for the candidates, and they were agreed upon. We flipped a coin to see who would go first, and tonight Brian Marl will be opening with his opening comments. Without any other questions, we'll move forward. Brian, you have 2 minutes for your opening comments.
Well, first, let me begin by thanking you, Scott, for agreeing to moderate this forum. I also want to thank Mr. Law for joining me here this evening, but most importantly, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here this evening. Most of you here know me. For those of you who do not, I want to take a moment and tell you who I am. I'm a proud sixth-generation Saline community resident and a graduate of Saline area schools. And I hope in the not-too-distant future to take my credits from Washtenaw Community College and transfer those to the University of Michigan and pursue a degree either in public science or public policy. Since 2005, I've worked in Lansing for the Michigan State House of Representatives as a legislative aide. And I work diligently every single day to help people get the most out of their government. I'm really passionate about government, and that's why I've served the last 4 years on City Council. But the most important thing about me is my family. My mother, Betsy Marl, and my father, Gary Marl, are in the audience this evening. My mother has been a first grade teacher in Saline area schools for over 30 years. My dad spent his entire professional life in the private sector as a car dealer, as a small business owner. So I understand, I get the hardships and the obstacles that small business people face on a daily basis. And my grandparents also had a profound impact on my life. They love Saline just as much as I do. And my parents and my grandparents shared their wisdom and their knowledge. And I think it's given me experience and wisdom beyond my years. And I'm really confident that I'm the right choice to lead Saline in the coming years. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I look forward to having a robust debate about our differing visions for moving Saline forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marl. Mr. Law, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Again, I echo what Mr. Marl had just mentioned. Thank you for taking the time to moderate this forum for us. And again, as I said, Mr. Marl, thank you for being here, and of course, everyone in the audience as well. Well, my name is Glenn Law. I was on City Council for almost 8 years, and I wanted to point out, first of all, before I go ahead into that, I wanted to point out that my wife and my daughter are in the audience. It happened to be that on Saturday, my wife and I celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary, and we forego a trip to go to Traverse City because of expenses, but we're glad we stayed in town because we got to try our new restaurant in town, so it all worked out in the end. I feel blessed to have her by my side for these 22 years, and of course I feel blessed to have them and my daughter, wife and my daughter with me through this campaign. I hope tonight, my friends, that there will be stark differences between myself and my opponent. Certainly I do bring with me a lot of real life experience, meaning I've worked in the private sector, I've worked in the public sector as an educator, as an elementary teacher. I take pride in that. I think it is the most rewarding career that anyone could ever have. I also, as I mentioned, have my family, and they are second to none to me. They are important, they are everything to me, and they keep me going. They support me through my years on City Council. They supported me for my decision to move up north for 1 year to Menominee to educate young children up there. And they supported me in this decision to lead the city. I want to have that chance and that privilege. I bring, again, as I say, almost 8 years of experience on City Council for that. And I look forward to hearing the debate and going through the issues as we go through tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. So we now move into the preliminary questions. Again, each of the candidates received these 3 questions ahead of time. We'll go with the first question. Because Mr. Marl won the toss and opened with his statement, we will now have Mr. Law answer the first question. Again, the format for the questions, each candidate will see 3 minutes. The first person to respond will get an extra minute after the second responder, so that they too can have extra time to respond to the other candidate. The first question, gentlemen. Mr. Law, this goes to you initially.
Right.
What is the most important issue facing Saline and how would you propose to address it?
Well, Mr. Lamb, I feel that the biggest issue facing Saline at this point is our financial situation. Saline has weathered the storm pretty well compared to many municipalities across the state, given the economic situation that the state and the whole country has been situated and given. We, as my years on council will attest, we kept expenses and we kept the line on the millage, and we really kept our financial house pretty much in steady order. But I think more than ever now, that is what is the most important issue facing us, that we keep our financial house in order, that we watch how we spend taxpayers' money, that we are careful as we proceed to any projects that may come up, that we are mindful of, that we are stewards of the taxpayers' money, that we are invested in that trust, and that we have the responsibility to carry out that trust. To propose to deal with that issue, I would, if elected mayor, I would want the entire council, myself obviously included, to have the discussion, go over all of the pros and cons, go over all the issues, all the things that we need to look at to make sure that we are financially stable. Because make no mistake about it, we have the personal property tax issue that's coming up before Lansing that we don't know what's going to happen with that. That has a profound or potentially profound impact on where and how we proceed in Saline as far as our financial picture is concerned. We have to make the right decisions, and as mayor, I will be there to hear what the citizens also obviously have to say, but also what my fellow council members have to say, because they are elected along with myself, if I should be so privileged to be elected mayor, to carry out and to hear what they citizens have to say and to focus in on that issue, which is financial stability.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Mr. Marl, same question.
Well, I think the biggest challenge, the biggest issue facing the citizens of this city is the downturn in the economy. And even though things are improving, the city has lost revenue and families and businesses are still struggling. At the same time, the demand for public services has stayed the same and in some cases actually increased. In addition to economic challenges, I would say that there are decisions being made in Lansing and Washington, D.C. that affect the city of Saline's ability to do business. These changes are not all bad, but they force municipalities to change and to adapt and to streamline services that they provide for citizens. As mayor, I would be committed to going through every possibility for city government to be more efficient and to save precious taxpayer dollars. This could include developing new partnerships with area organizations and nearby communities and eliminating unneeded or redundant services. But in addition to the downturn in the economy, let me just segue for just a moment, because I think you asked the question about what's the most important issue facing the citizens of this city. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention public safety, because I think at the municipal level, one of the most basic and fundamental services that we provide to our citizens is public safety. It's police and fire. And it's probably the issue I'm the most enthusiastic about. I'm enthusiastic about providing our folks on the front line with the resources and tools they need to do their job, but also making sure that there are policies in place that don't restrict or inhibit their ability to do their job effectively. And I'm proud to say that during my 4 years on council, I've been engaged, I've been in tuned, I've been accessible to those folks on the front line. And that's why I'm really proud to acknowledge that I've been endorsed by the recently retired police chief, the recently retired deputy police chief, and the current fire chief and current deputy chief. So again, public safety, police and fire are so fundamental, and I want you to know that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure those folks on the front line have the resources and tools they need to do the job, and I'm not drafting or adopting policies that would restrict their ability to do so.
Mr. Law, you have 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, I would also agree with Mr. Marl that I believe that police and fire services are paramount to the city. And I did stand up against a proposal that would have contracted out the dispatch system to Pittsfield at the time. And I would be very hesitant to support that measure if it should come up down the road. I believe that police and fire are key because they are a vital part of this community. It is a major part of the community. It's the fabric of the community. And police dispatch, as all police officers and firefighters, certainly deserve our respect and certainly deserve consideration whenever we talk about budgets, whenever we talk about any issues of dealing with services and the like.
Thank you, gentlemen. For our next question, Mr. Marl, you'll receive this question first. What suggestions would you make to City Council on how to address probable reductions in tax-related revenue, such as personal property tax, lower property values, or loss of industrial base, etc.?
Thank you. I'm going to take the, the personal property tax portion of that question first. The next mayor of Saline must be proactive and engaged in advocating for our community. And that means working with stakeholders and representatives in both Lansing and in Washington, D.C. to protect Saline's interests. Again, reiterating a point that I made during my opening statement, I've worked in Lansing since 2005, and I have relationships in both the Republican caucus, and the Democratic caucus. I have relationships with elected officials, with appointed officials, and with staff members. And so I'm going to utilize those relationships and those connections to be an advocate for the city of Saline. And on the issue of advocacy, because I think advocacy is so key, because the next mayor and the next council need to be really engaged with what's going on in DC and in Lansing. Advocacy is not about blaming Lansing for our problems or fear-based accusations. It's about relationships and communication. And again, I have the experience and the understanding to advocate effectively for Saline. Getting back to the question, though, for just a moment, so your question was, what suggestions would you make to City Council on how to address probable tax-related issues? And I think the point that I want to make is more than addressing the loss. I think we need to be advocates for expanding the tax base. And I think city government does have a role to play in that, in creating an environment and an atmosphere where business development and entrepreneurship can thrive. And so as mayor, I would work with council to seek out new opportunities, but also to nurture existing relationships with Ann Arbor Spark, with the Michigan Small Business Technological Development Center, with our new Main Street organization, with the local Chamber of Commerce. So again, I think that the point I want to make, or the component of this question that I want to emphasize the most, is it's about building relationships and about being a genuine advocate for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Marl. Mr. Law, same question.
Well, I mentioned this earlier about the personal property tax, and I mentioned how important and vital it is as they proceed in Lansing as to what they're going to do with that, because as I mentioned before, it has a potentially profound impact on our future ability here in Saline and other communities as far as finances and where we spend money and how we spend money, and if we even get money, frankly. The state has been cutting back on the amount of funding for years that the municipalities get, and that has put a strain on the budgets, has put a strain on staff to try to make the budgets balance out, or at least come out to where we can work with it. And what I would do to suggest is that, yes, absolutely advocate and encourage our state representatives, our legislators, to follow through that. If you're going to get rid of the personal property tax, using that as one example, then please, you must, for the municipalities, put something else to replace it. Because you are, in effect, while taking the personal property tax or reducing it, you are impacting municipalities unduly. And I would say that if this were to happen, it could set a financial crisis in many municipalities across the state. And I'm not trying to make it a bigger thing than it is, but that's the way I see it. And the next mayor and council are going to have to be very vigilant and very and take the task, the bull by the horns, if you will, and lobby the legislators, as we've been doing, and as council has previously been doing. And when I was on council, the same thing. We've lobbied our legislatures to act on our behalf. We go through the Michigan Municipal League. That's our advocate through Lansing. That's one of the main proponents, groups that we rely on to act as our advocate for these issues. So I would urge and would make City Council address it by, again, pressuring our state legislators that if the personal property tax is gone, and I agree that businesses need it because You know, they need to grow, they need to succeed. We want them to succeed in this city. But at the same time, we're going to have a situation where, you know, we cut services or we raise the millage, what have you, to make up for something like this that goes by the boards. You know, we have to be, and the next mayor has to be with the council, ready to act.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Mr. Marl, you have 1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to emphasize this point of advocacy and lobbying just one more time. Because again, I'm really proud of the fact that in the last 7 years, during my time in Lansing, again, I've developed relationships with Republicans, I've developed relationships with Democrats, I've developed relationships with appointed members of the executive branch, and I have great relationships with a number of staff members. And so I want to parlay that those skills, that experience, to be a really effective advocate and an ambassador for the Saline community. And again, it's not about assigning blame, it's about developing relationships and articulating a clear and consistent message and narrative as to why something needs to be done and what the effect would be on a municipality. So I think the advocacy is important, and I know that as mayor I'm going to be a really strong, effective advocate for this community.
Thank you. Next question will go to Mr. Law for opening. Your question is, what ideas do you have to involve the community in volunteer opportunities and input into government decisions?
Well, Mr. Lem, I think, first of all, we are blessed here in the city of Saline with a great volunteer base, second to none. And I've had the privilege of volunteering myself for many of these activities, the Summerfest, Celtic Festival, Winterfest, Summer Music Series. It could not work without a strong and vibrant volunteer base. We're very, as I said, very blessed to have that. That being said, we need to have, of course, more to come out and support these programs. We need more to come out and get involved. I'm a very strong proponent of an active citizenry in the community. I like to see citizens take up the mantle and take initiative on certain projects. The Red Barrel is one. The new flagpole at Oakwood Cemetery is another. Little government intervention or involvement, just playing a supporting role. That's perfect. For volunteers, we have to treat them just as, you know, like gold, because they are really one of the backbones of this community. We rely on them to give these festivals and other events in the city the go. There's no bones about it. To get them more involved in government decision making, we have commissions at the city. We have the Parks Commission. We have the Arts and Culture Commission. We have the Planning Commission. Let's have them go out to these festivals or these events, set up a booth, you know, get the word out, let them know that there is a commission or a committee that deals with parks, that deals with arts and culture. Maybe there isn't, maybe a lot of people don't know that there's that Arts and Culture Committee. We need to make that known. And I think if we make that known and present it to them in that way, then we can get people to come in and buy in and get themselves involved on this committee, because face it, a lot of these committees face a lot of turnover. A lot of people leave occasionally because of various reasons, moving out of state, etc., jobs and all those things. And just being visible in the community will go a long way to help. And as I said, I think the volunteers will grow, and that will allow them to have a buy-in into government decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Mr. Marl, same question.
Well, community leadership is not meaningful without honest, consistent feedback from our citizens. And that's something I've lived by since I was first elected to City Council in 2008. I think people in this community know that if they have a question and they have a concern about city government, they're welcome and encouraged to email me, to stop me in the grocery store, or to give me a buzz. And they'll find that they don't just have an elected official who listens, they have an elected official who responds and gets the job done. And I think people appreciate that. So I would take that same approach that I've used as a city council member and apply it to the office of mayor. People will know that if they have a question, they have a concern about city government, that they're welcome to reach out to me, and that they're going to get answers and their problems are going to be solved. In addition to that, I need to give a shout out, and I need to applaud the current mayor, because in the last couple of years she has convened issue-specific task forces to look at some long-term and systemic problems in our community. And I was honored to serve on 2 of those, a rec center sustainability task force and then Oakwood Cemetery task force. But instead of just having council members and staff people on those task forces, I want to empower and get some private citizens on those boards as well, because I think their perspective is unique and different and would be very valuable. The final point that I will make, and I know this is going to sound a little cliche because we hear it all the time, but I think we can do a better job of utilizing our website and utilizing social media to solicit feedback and opinions from our citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Marl. Mr. Law, 1 minute.
Well, I would want to acknowledge, and I forgot in my initial comments, a shout out to the Environmental Commission that has taken the initiative to go out in the community, set up a booth, and make themselves known in the public, and helping them get people to, wow, this Environmental Commission, you guys do a lot of great things, you know, the rain barrel, and all those other projects. I mean, that gets people to say, wow, you know, maybe I'd like to contribute to this. Maybe I can be somewhat, you know, involved in some manner in this. Let's have those commissions that, you know, the Planning Commission. It may not sound exciting, Mr. Lamb, I know, I've been on that. But it is an integral and very important part of the community. And so, you know, let's get the word out on those commissions, and let's have the citizens participate in government decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. That concludes the 3 questions that the candidates received ahead of time, more of the prepared responses to the interest within the city. I will offer again, if you want to raise your hand to offer a question up for this evening. We'll now be moving into your questions for the evening. These will be unprepared responses, and hopefully we will put them back on their heels in some of these questions. So please, if you haven't already submitted a question, please raise your hand. One of our representatives will come to you. And the more questions we have, the more entertaining and more insightful this evening will be. The first of the questions we have from our audience is a 2-part question. Why are you seeking the office of mayor, and what are your political ambitions past being mayor? This will go to Mr. Marl initially. Mr. Marl.
Well, the simple answer is that I'm running for mayor of the city of Saline because I think Saline is at a fork in the road. And I think we face a whole host of challenges and obstacles in the years ahead. And I believe I'm the right person to lead us through this minefield, if you will, to better days. I'm also running because I have a very clear and consistent vision. And I focus on 5 key areas that I think are crucial to Saline's long-term success. And it's economic development, investment in our infrastructure, support for public safety, financial stewardship, and openness and transparency in city government. And again, I think those 5 points, that's kind of my platform, I guess, are really crucial to Saline's long-term success. So the simple answer is I have a vision, I have a real enthusiasm for this community, and I think, again, we face some obstacles, some trying days ahead, but I think I'm the right person to lead us, again, through this minefield, if you pardon the expression, to better days, because I really do believe that Saline's best days are ahead of it.
Mr. Law?
Well, why I'm running for mayor is that I dedicated almost 8 years of service to the community. I am passionate about this community. My wife and I came to this community from Ann Arbor mainly because of the schools. I'll say that for sure, because we had a daughter that was very young at the time, about to start elementary school, and we looked all over and we thought, you know, Saline schools, we've heard a lot of good things about them, and this is why we moved here. I wanted to serve because I feel that citizens should serve in some capacity. It doesn't have to be a council seat. It doesn't have to be mayor. It can be, as I said, one of the committees that we have. It can be through your church. It can be through anything that's a community-oriented group. I want to take the cities in the next direction. I feel that I'm the right person who has the consensus building, the ability to reach across, if you will, the aisle of disagreement or of opposition, if you will, that, you know, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. And that's one of my philosophies. You know, we don't agree with everything, and that's fine. But I think that I have the ability to bridge that gap and bring people together and reach the decisions and make the decisions that are important for the betterment of this community. That's why I'm running for mayor, because I bring that experience that I had, double the experience that my opponent has, almost 8 years on city council. That's 8 city budgets. That's 8 years of various issues, controversial and otherwise, that we had to deal with as a one member of council that I had to with my other 6 members and colleagues. My political aspirations are no further than they are right now. I win the seat as mayor. I have no interest in going anywhere above that. I feel that this is the community that I want to serve. This is the community I want to dedicate my service to and to the public, because I feel this is my home and I want to contribute in a way that I feel would best benefit everyone. Thank you.
Scott, I apologize. I missed the second portion of that question. I didn't mean to omit
Well,
an
hold
answer.
on.
Okay.
We'll follow order here.
Okay.
You have 1 minute
Oh,
rebuttal.
okay, excuse me, okay. Well, all I would say is, you know, I'm running for mayor of Saline because I want to be mayor of Saline, okay? And if I didn't think I was the best person for the job, I wouldn't be running. I mean, that's first and foremost. The only other point that I will make is I have no immediate ambitions to run for anything but mayor of Saline. And I'm, again, 100% committed to this community. And I actually think if you're going to serve as mayor, it's something you should probably be willing to do for a number of years if you're going to be effective and accomplish something tangible. So again, my immediate interest and commitment is to the city of Saline and serving as its next mayor.
Thank you very much. The next question we have from our audience: how important to you is the city and the schools in the relationship between them? Mr. Law?
Oh, I think it's very vital. In fact, I made mention of this going door to door and elsewhere, that I think it's very important that the city somehow have a role with the schools, that we join forces, we team up to curb expenses, to maybe, such as example, you know, snow plow or snow removal, taking care of the parks, or somehow, you know, streamlining our services in that direction. Schools and city government are really, as I say, they're the fabric of the community. It's what citizens see most and more often than any other level of government, whether it be Congress, state even. It is very important. Schools, I mean, that's why, as I stated, that's one of the main reasons why we moved to Saline, because we found the schools to be top-notch, and we still feel that way. And having the city and the schools sort of maybe joining forces. And I would propose that as mayor, I would like to see more interaction with the cities and the schools, more joint meetings, if you will, where we can discuss and maybe find ways of streamlining or joining forces to streamline costs or cut costs, because I think the residents and citizens would support that initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Mr. Marl, same question.
Well, clearly Saline area schools have a reputation of being outstanding institutions of education, which they are, and it's what lends the quality of our schools helps to give Saline its character, and as my opponent just indicated, it helps to bring people to our community. So as mayor, I want to partner with Saline area schools on every opportunity, every occasion that I have to partner with them. I think that's really key. I think that's really fundamental, and it gets back to that phrase I used earlier, being an advocate. As mayor, you don't have a direct role in improving the quality of education in Saline, but you do have a role as an advocate and as an ambassador. And I would cite specifically, we had this past spring, we had a joint meeting between the City Council, the School Board, the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street Board, and a whole host of other entities. And on that evening, I brought up the idea of investigating, along with Saline area schools, the feasibility of maybe sharing some resources and consolidating some services. I think there may be some redundancies as it relates to community education and the City of Saline's Parks and Recreation Department. So I think that should be explored. And I think my suggestion is sort of indicative of what my approach would be as mayor, to identify overlap with other entities, and to explore the elimination of those redundancies in the hopes that it generates some cost savings as well as improves efficiencies. But again, Saline area schools are top notch, and I'm going to do everything within my power to be an advocate and to be a supporter.
Mr. Law, you have 1 minute.
No, just to follow up what I just said, that I agree that I think that schools and this area schools and the city, I think it owes it to the citizens of the city to work more collaboratively together to find ways of joining forces and getting costs down. I think it benefits both sides.
Thank you. Next question from the audience. The library and city have collaborated on several projects. The current non-motorized pathway will be a wonderful asset to our community. What other organizations would you consider working with, and what could be some shared projects? Mr. Marl?
Well, I just cited one, which is a collaboration between the city and Saline area schools to identify redundancies relating to parks and recreation and community education. And in my opening statement, I talked about leveraging some of our economic opportunities by partnering with Ann Arbor Spark, with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, with our new Main Street entity, with the Chamber of Commerce, just to name a few. And also, I think, empowering our 3 economic development boards at the municipal level, which are TIFA, EDC, and LDFA. Again, I think what the questioner is really asking is, what is your approach going to be to consolidation and partnering? And again, to reiterate, my approach, my style, is to seek out those opportunities in the hopes that it generates some cost savings and improves efficiencies. And the questioner is absolutely right. The example of the City of Saline partnering with the library to develop this non-motorized pathway is a great collaboration. And the other entity that deserves credit is CARES, which is also a sort of, well, it is a government entity. So again, my style, my approach would be to seek out these opportunities and develop relationships in the hopes that they result in cost savings and improved efficiencies.
Mr. Law, same question.
Well, I certainly agree that that more collaboration with various groups around the city will help immensely, and gets back to that question about volunteering. It gets more people to buy into what city government is doing and sort of have more of that empowerment. I'm all for that. Service groups, I think, are a good thing. Lions clubs, I mean, the Rotary is a good example where we've collaborated, where they've actually worked with the city. They help raise funds, and there's a pavilion over at Taft Park for that. They helped with the summer series, Summerfest. So the list is endless. It really is. I think. And I echo what my opponent says, is that yes, we I think owe it to the citizens to look for different ways and involve as many groups as possible. The library is certainly a good one, and I mentioned the service groups is another positive entity that we can also get involved with. That, as I keep saying, brings more citizens to be more involved in local government.
Mr. Marl?
I just want to make one more point on the issue of cooperation and consolidation. That is not, in the coming years, it's not just going to be an ideal approach to problem solving and generating cost savings. It is going to become a necessity if we are to survive and remain fiscally solvent. So again, I think the next mayor and the next city council have got to be, and I'm going to use the word deliberately, eager in their determination to seek out these new opportunities.
Okay, gentlemen, next question. What do you consider a walkable community when our street side sidewalks are becoming deplorable? Mr. Law?
Walkable communities certainly are sidewalks. They are bike paths. They are trails. They are any non-motorized pathway. Certainly, I know the city is just recently, or is going to be soon, undertaking a study of the sidewalks, where they need to be fixed, repaired. I think that is very important. I think that is key, because I've been in a few cities over my life, and I've never seen a city such as Saline have so many sidewalks. I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, my in-laws over in Canada do have a lack of sidewalks, needless to say. So I'm very pleased that we have this community that where you can go from A to B without the use of a car. But I certainly understand the questioner's concerns about the condition of some of these sidewalks. We have to really analyze and look closely where they need to be fixed, where they need to be repaired. I mean, it is a safety issue, really, when it comes right down to it for the citizens, and we want to make sure, and, you know, it's incumbent on the city to do that, because, you know, we maintain those sidewalks, and we want to make them as passable as possible.
Mr. Marl, same question.
Well, I think a walkable community is a community that maintains a high standard of excellence as it relates to our sidewalks, and make sure, and it's a community that makes sure when possible and when practical, there aren't gaps and that sidewalks are connected to one another. That's what creates a walkable community. The questioner is right. There are sidewalks in the city of Saline which are, and I'm going to use this expression deliberately as well, in deplorable condition. And we have much work to do. And I'm committed to moving forward and making this community more walkable and improving the existing sidewalks we have, which are, again, in deplorable condition.
Mr. Law, 1 minute.
Well, I wouldn't say that all of them or most of them are in deplorable condition. I've walked this community quite a number of times over the last few months, going door to door and canvassing areas. And yes, there are areas that certainly need to be addressed. There's no doubt about it. But I wouldn't go as far as saying that they're all in terrible shape. Certainly, and that's what the study hopefully will accomplish. What areas do we need to target, and what areas need addressing right away?
Thank you, gentlemen. Next question. The west side of the city of Saline seems to get neglected. This is a great gateway into Saline from the west. What would you do to help develop the west side and make it more appealing? Mr. Marl?
Well, first of all, let me say, because I think Mr. Law did not hear me correctly, I said some of the sidewalks in the city are in deplorable
Let's
condition.
focus on this question.
I know, I just wanted to clarify that because that was just not accurate. Repeat your question one more time, Mr. Lem.
No. Gentlemen, moving forward, we will focus on the questions at hand and not giving extra time for a rebuttal. The rules were set aside and you agreed to the rules before we started. The question is, and time has already been started on this question.
You can take my time away, that's fine.
The west side of the city of Saline seems to get neglected. This is a gateway into Saline from the west. What would you do to help develop the west side and make it more appealing?
Well, I would reiterate back to a point I previously made, which is about developing relationships. And I think the city could develop relationships with the merchants in that area, with the Chamber of Commerce, possibly with some other community organizations to improve the aesthetic look of that area. But more importantly, I think we need a strategic business plan which provides incentives and attracts entrepreneurs to that area. Because right now, one of the challenges on the western edge of town is that they do not have a strong, they don't have an anchor business. And I think that an opportunity in the future, again, is to develop a strategic plan that provides incentives and attracts more business investment, more dollars to the western side of town.
Mr. Law, same question.
Certainly, this has been an issue that while I was on council, I was really concerned about. And I brought it up a few times when I was on council when the discussion merited. The west side is, by and large, neglected. The east side is, by and large, neglected. The downtown is very important to the city of Saline. I make that abundantly clear, that it is very important, but we cannot and should not neglect, or not seemingly neglect, certainly not intentionally, but not cast aside the west side or the east side. It's the whole city, and we should focus on it in a fair manner. I think it would be useful to try to see if Main Street, this group that was developed, could maybe take a leading role in some way to to work with the merchants down there. I agree with my opponent's suggestion about the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce has a key role in business development and making all areas of the city aesthetically pleasing. There was talk a while ago about expanding the downtown towards the west side. Really never got much traction for obvious reasons, finances and the like, but not saying that we set aside funds for that since funds are very low, but let's down the road perhaps take a look at that, see where we can extend the downtown, if it goes down to the west side a little bit, and because the downtown is a beautiful area, and imagine that somewhat looking away on the west side as well as the east side. I think it's a very important issue, and I would propose Main Street and other groups, Chamber of Commerce, also get involved in that.
Mr. Marl, you have 1 extra minute.
No.
The next question, we had 2 questions come in that were quite similar, so I want to read a little bit of each and put them together. Do you believe the population of Saline should become more diverse? How would you encourage welcoming a more diverse community to Saline? Mr. Law?
Well, I'm always in favor of a more diverse community, and yes, Saline is got that impression that it's not a diverse community, and perhaps, you know, certainly there is room to improve on that. But I think it's made some headway. I think it has made strides in that direction. I think the Civil Rights Commission that's been somewhat dormant over at City Hall can maybe have another look at revitalizing, restarting in some manner, and see how we can find ways to make Saline more diverse. I think working with the school district also, there's another example of where we can collaborate with the schools to find ways to make a more welcoming approach to those who are minorities that come to the city, that we want to welcome them. And Saline, in my view, is a welcoming city. It's a city that I mean, we have a lot of opportunities to have a more diverse community. It's up to us, and it's up to as the mayor and as council to find ways and work with groups to, you know, to make that happen.
Mr. Marl?
Well, as it relates to the issue of diversity and encouraging different groups to come to Saline, I tend to think that we have more in common than some would suggest. And I think that all people will find Saline an appealing place to visit, to live in, or to start a business in if it's safe, if it has world-class infrastructure, if there are economic opportunities, and it has world-class schools. And so again, I sort of revert back to those 5 key points that I think are so crucial to Saline's long-term success. And I think we need a mayor and we need a council who are going to focus on those issues, because I think focusing on those issues is good for all people. The only thing that I would add is as mayor, and I think I would speak not only for myself but also for council, that we are a welcoming community. And if you work hard and you play by the rules, you're welcomed and encouraged to participate and live in Saline.
Thank you, Mr. Marl. Mr. Law, you have 1 minute.
No, just again to repeat that the Saline, yes, it does have some work to do, but you know, we as a community, by and large, I think are a very welcoming community, and we just have to work harder to do that.
Next question. Do you have any specific thoughts on environmental protection, especially the river, the wetlands, and the clean air? Mr. Marl?
Well, if we as a city identified a danger or a risk, I would not hesitate to draft policy to protect our natural resources, period. As it relates to environmental policy, I'm going to rely on and work to empower our environmental commission. We've already talked about our environmental commission this evening. They've done a lot of great work in this community, educating people and also recommending policy. And I want to see that group continue to grow, continue to mature, and continue to be more active in recommending policy. So again, the point I would make is if our natural resources, if our environment were threatened and there was appropriate municipal role in drafting a policy to prevent contamination or pollution or anything that would compromise that, I would be in favor of it.
Mr. Law?
Well, I certainly agree that the Environmental Commission, as I alluded to earlier, has been a major benefit in the city of Saline, and they're very visible. And I believe that they could take that leadership role of making our community more, if I say, environmentally friendly to all resources that we have in this community. We value our resources that we have. I mean, Mill Pond Park and all those areas, the Wilderness Park and the natural area there. We want to, maintain that and keep it vibrant and welcoming for all citizens. And I think the Environmental Commission has that role, and they're doing that role very well. I don't think we really necessarily need a policy at City Hall to implement such a thing. Let the Environmental Commission, as my opponent says, has taken a significant role, and they've grown. Let them suggest what, to council, what recommendations they can come up, and because that's empowering them, and I think that that's what they want.
Mr. Marl? No? No. All right. Next question. We have heard many similar responses from each of you this evening. What areas do you feel you differ, and why is your position better for Saline? Mr. Law.
I think, I'll make it clear if I didn't before. I think our major differences is our experience in real life experiences. That is meaning that I worked for many years in commercial radio. I know what it was like to struggle for that, for that job, and to maintain a paycheck, and to balance our budget at home and try to maintain a stable financial environment at home. And just the experience that I bring to the office of mayor, it's many years of that, as well as working as an educator, seeing the kids that I come across with, or come across from, or to, or with, that have come from very deplorable home conditions and livelihoods. I mean, not to mention also my family. I mean, I have raised a family in this community. I know what it's like to raise a family, and the difficulties that are involved with that. My wife and I have worked very hard to raise our daughter, and in a community that we're blessed to be with. Differences, I think, personally, I'd say, I have the ability to reach a consensus, to listen to all points of view, and to take in all points of view, and to weigh those, and not to say, okay, well, this is it, this is my way. No, I don't come with a set agenda. I come with an open mind to the council table. That's what I learned over my almost 8 years on council. That's what I bring to the office of mayor. And I think my fellow council members and staff would understand and appreciate that.
Mr. Marl?
Well, first of all, let me say that I work very hard in Lansing, again, to help people get the most out of their government, and I'm not going to apologize to anybody for working in Lansing and doing what I do. I'm proud of it, and it's really my honor, my privilege. The differences between the two of us on some issues, there's not a lot of difference, but I think the real difference is our leadership style. And again, I would revert back to those 5 key points, that vision thing that I've been talking about throughout the course of this campaign. Leaders need clear and consistent visions. That's what leadership's about. It's about articulating a vision. It's about having the know-how then to take that vision from concept to reality. I've done that on city council. I've done that as president of my church and CFO. I did that as chair of the Oakwood Cemetery Task Force. I articulate a vision. It's not an agenda. It's a vision for moving the community forward. And then I take that vision from concept to reality. My leadership style is different than that of my opponents. I think of myself as a much more proactive person. I'm about suggesting ideas. I'm not about just criticizing and second-guessing other people's suggestions. So Again, on the issues, there may it may appear that there aren't a lot of differences, but I think the differences are our approach to problem solving and our leadership skills.
Mr. Law, 1 minute.
I hope my opponent isn't suggesting that I criticize or suggestions that may come to the table. That's far from it, and that's not what I just described. Be as it may, however, you mentioned leadership. Certainly, I have the ability for leadership. I've taken on leadership roles. I was a president of my congregation over at Trinity Lutheran. I was on the stewardship board over there, and I'm still a member of the stewardship board at Trinity Lutheran. I know that it does take leadership. It does take skills, people skills, listening skills, communication skills, organization skills. I learned all those and still learning, because I'm not perfect, when I was in the private sector and when I'm now teaching. I learn all the time. And I know what it means to learn, to lead, to take a role, but also to weigh all opinions and fairly come to some sort of resolution with all counsel.
Time. Next question. With the loss of Country Market, what would you do to attract new options to Saline? Mr. Marl.
Well, appreciate the question. It gets back to, again, a previous point that I made, which is about developing those relationships with entities who will help to attract and bring investment to Saline. So that's Ann Arbor Spark, it's Michigan Economic Development Corporation, it's our new Main Street organization, and it's the local Saline Chamber of Commerce. But also, one of the approaches that I'm going to take towards economic development is empowering our 3 economic development boards at the municipal level. And again, that's our Economic Development Commission, our Local Development Finance Authority, and our Tax Increment Finance Authority. Those boards should be doing more than just approving budgets. We have some great people on those boards with experience in real estate, in finance, in banking. They're the ones with that private sector know-how who could help us develop a plan to not only reward businesses that currently exist within the city limits, but to provide incentives and tools to attract new investment and new business to our community. So the questioner is quite right. The loss of Country Market was really devastating to the eastern end of town and to that shopping center in particular, and we need to be really emphatic and aggressive about developing an economic development plan and providing resources that will attract small business investment, or private sector investment, excuse me.
Mr. Law.
Well, certainly, I certainly agree that the Country Market and its leaving the city was a serious blow, and it's unfortunate. However, I believe that I'm all for free market enterprise, and I believe that government should have a very limited role as far as how far they can go into trying to, attract, or where they're going to, work in getting another tenant for that facility. It's a privately run mall, and it's an unfortunate situation. I certainly agree that, working with the Chamber of Commerce, working with Ann Arbor Spark, other groups, as well as Main Street, can go a long way to help with that particular mall, because it is one of the gateways in the community. And I, as mayor, would like to work as hard as possible to see that with free market and the enterprise that goes with that, that government, in a limited way, can help make things happen.
Mr. Marl, 1 minute.
Let me just be clear. Mr. Law is absolutely right. Most of the heavy lifting relating to this problem specifically is going to need to be done by the private sector, by private finance. But I do believe, and I've talked about this since the beginning of my campaign, there is an important and profound role for government to play in economic development and fostering an environment where small businesses and entrepreneurship can thrive. It is limited, but there is an important role, and as mayor, again, we're going to move forward and utilize all of our tools and expand on our existing relationships to improve the economic development climate in our city.
Thank you, Mr. Marl. Next question. You both have been on council. Please describe an initiative you participated in on council that you are most proud of, and describe your role in that initiative. Mr. Law.
Well, towards the end of my tenure on council, we had a work session with council, and there was a proposal, or at least there was the mindset that, well, we had a Summerfest, we had a Celtic Festival, we had a Harvest of the Arts for the fall. Why not something for the winter? We live in Michigan, let's embrace the winter. That's my view, I think. I love winter. Maybe a lot don't like winter, but I do, and I felt it was a good idea to have some sort of a Winterfest. Now, I understand that there was a Winterfest years ago, but it just sort of faded away. I thought a more organized event would be something to bring more people downtown and embrace winter. And I was proud to have the council follow me on that and agree that, yeah, I think we should have a Winterfest. It would be a good idea. I was proud to sit on that committee along with a number of other dedicated community members. And we launched it in 2011 with snow. We had a snowman building contest, which Saline won. Unfortunately, last year, the snow didn't come. We still have the title, but hopefully in 2013, we'll pick it up, and hopefully Mother Nature will cooperate. Another initiative I was very proud of and taking goes back to my roots as a hockey fan.
Just one initiative.
What's that?
Just one initiative.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Marl.
In 2010, I was appointed to serve on the Oakwood Cemetery Task Force, and I became chair of that entity in 2011. And the Oakwood Cemetery Task Force was charged with a very daunting task, if you will. We faced a long-term and systemic problem in our community, which was that Oakwood Cemetery was just about at capacity. So what do? Well, we reaffirmed our commitment to improving and maintaining the existing land, but we also decided to utilize some unutilized space in the mausoleum, and we installed a columbarium. For those of you who don't know what a columbarium is, it's basically a storage unit for ashes, for cremains. And the data indicates that cremations are going to become increasingly popular. So we provided a space inside our mausoleum for people to store the ashes of their loved ones. In addition to that, we took existing land in the cemetery and installed a retaining wall. That retaining wall is more than just aesthetically appealing, it's very practical. And it supports the superstructure, the infrastructure for about 88 additional spaces. Okay? The most important thing with all of these improvements is that unlike just about every other task in government, it had a zero impact on the budget. In fact, in time, in perpetuity, it will bring in money to Oakwood Cemetery. So again, in less than 2 years, we confronted a long-term systemic problem, we addressed it, and now we have a solution that will bring money into the cemetery for years to come.
Mr. Law, 1 minute about.
Well, just to follow up on the Winterfest, that it is a growing, just like many festivals, and some may argue, well, there's too many festivals. I beg to differ. I think people enjoy going out to the community and enjoy going downtown or any other parts of the town. And Winterfest, I'm proud to say, it goes to Henny Field, it goes to all the other areas with the 5K run. It's a well organized and great event, and I'm proud to have had a part in it. Thank you.
Next question. How do you propose to keep property taxes down in Saline? Mr. Marl.
Well, it's a good question. And I'm proud to say that I have had a clear and consistent position on our millage rate, on the tax policy issue, since the moment I announced my candidacy on March the 1st. And let me first say that one of the reasons why Saline has been a great place to live in, a great place to start a business in, is because of our relatively low tax rate, our low millage rate. And I'm proud of that historically. And I want to do my utmost to maintain that. Now, my leadership approach and style is one where I never take anything off the table. So if it became imperative to keep the city on a strong fiscal footing, I would be amenable to investigating the possibility of increasing our millage rate. But I'm going to do my darndest to make sure that we keep it as low as possible. And that means literally scrutinizing every single line item in the budget to see if there's room for cost savings, consolidations, maybe even privatizations. I think we owe that to our taxpayers. We owe that to our citizens. There was in fact, one of the questions that we received in advance was about the economy. And I started by saying that businesses and citizens are still hurting. They are. That's why I know it's my responsibility to do my utmost to maintain that historically low tax rate.
Mr. Law?
Well, as mayor, I would certainly follow with the approach I take, and that is listening to all entities and all stakeholders in the city. That not only includes my fellow council members, but also the city staff, which certainly is second to none and has shouldered a lot of the responsibility and the burden for trying to make sure that, you know, we keep our heads above the water, if you will, and I applaud them for all their efforts over the years, certainly while I was on council. I can't say that taxes will not be raised because I don't have the crystal ball in front of me. I don't know how things will play out in Lansing. I don't know how things will play out over the course of the next few months. And I certainly am not one to want to have taxes raised. I want to make sure that we make every effort to look at every avenue possible to make sure that we avoid that at all costs. I can promise you that as mayor, I will, along with council, be responsible with taxpayers' money and how we spend it, where we spend it. It's what we're entrusted with as elected officials. But I want to hear from an active citizenry. I want to hear from them as well as my fellow council members. Do we raise the millage? If it means this, if it means that. That's what I want to hear.
Mr. Marl, 1 minute.
Let me just reiterate one more time. Since the moment I announced my candidacy on March the 1st, my position relating to tax policy has been consistent. You will know, with Brian Marl as mayor, taxes will only go up if it's absolutely imperative. And you will know that every other option has been exhausted. And the proof is in the pudding, if you will. I would ask you to look at my track record. I've been on council now for 4 years. They've probably been 4 of the most difficult financial years in the city's history. And in each one of those 4 years, in each one of those budget cycles, I was a stout advocate for maintaining our millage rate. And I'm going to be a stout advocate for keeping it as low as possible as mayor as well.
All right, let's carry this further. If the state does end the PPT, which we know to be the personal property tax, and the city needs to make budget cuts, where would you cut? Mr. Law?
Well, that is certainly an interesting question, and a question that, in all honesty, I don't know if I can answer right now, because it's a question that needs to be weighted very carefully. It's a question that needs to be scrutinized and has to be looked at all possible avenues. And certainly I would agree with probably what many would say, is that we want to maintain our our police department, our fire department services as much as we can. But there are areas that maybe we can look to in that area and other areas of the city departments to scale back salaries or scale back step increases. I mean, those are just things that come to mind right as you ask the question, Mr. Lamb. It's a very tough question to answer, and it gets into a lot of emotions. It gets into a lot of, oh, well, you didn't consider this, and what about that? What about the festivals? Certainly, maybe. Maybe we have to cut the number of festivals. Maybe we have to cut the number of days. Maybe we can't. Maybe we, in a small way, don't waive the fees for parades, for festivals, or for the like. But make no mistake, I, as mayor, will listen to all entities and will consider carefully everything if it comes to where the PPT is eliminated. It is a distinct possibility. And the mayor has to be ready to take on that leadership role. And I feel that I am ready to take on that role because I will listen. I will consider all options.
Mr. Marl, same question.
Well, again, I would revert back to a point I made earlier this evening, which is that my leadership style is one where I never take any option off the table, with the one exception being I will never cast a vote or make a decision that undermines our ability to effectively provide public safety services to our citizens. But salaries would have to be on the table. Benefits would have to be on the table. We would actively explore consolidations and outsourcings and privatizations. That's less than ideal. Let me be candid about that. The other thing that we would have to explore is, as my opponent alluded to, our support for festivals and community events. One thing I've always had a very consistent position on is our Celtic Festival. Our Celtic Festival is a wonderful event. It brings not only regional recognition to Saline, but also national and international recognition to Saline. But my position is it shouldn't be underwritten by taxpayers. Another thing that I would actively consider, again, if the state or federal government acted in a way that deprived Saline of a significant amount of revenue, would be to potentially restructure the building and engineering department, because I think that could generate some cost savings. But again, the important point that I want to make here is my leadership style is one in which nothing would be off the table, with the exception being the city's ability to provide high-quality public safety programs to its citizens.
Mr. Law, 1 minute.
I certainly agree that I think that all avenues should be investigated and all stakeholders should have a say. And then that mainly, when we're talking about something as big as an issue such as the personal property tax and the possible elimination of that, we're talking serious possible cuts, serious, like beyond the bone. And this is where it's incumbent, I can't say it enough, where the citizens of this city have to say, okay, where, and we ask them, where should we go? Where? And that gives us the ability to also say, well, we can at least say that the citizens, for the most part, want this to happen. But I, as mayor, would agree that, and the council, they take the shoulder, they take the brunt of the decisions. That's what they elect us for. And that's my plan to carry that out. I will not shy away from making those tough decisions.
Thank you. Just so everyone knows from a time check, we have 15 minutes left. If you have a burning question you've been wanting to ask and haven't written that out yet, I please encourage you to raise your hand and let our representatives come seek you out. Next question. What do you think of the farmers market, and what is your vision for the market in the future? Mr. Marl.
Oh, I think the farmers market is great, and I applaud all those who make the farmers market what it is, and I think it's wonderful that we continue to see the farmers market grow and expand. I think the quick answer to this is that I envision a permanent home for the market, which is a little bit more amenable to the kind of services that they provide. But of course the issue here is funding, and we already made the point this evening. I think the one thing that both of us agree on is we're in pretty dire economic and fiscal straits, financial, excuse me. So I think long-term finding a permanent home for the farmers market, but I think there's a role for the mayor to play in encouraging the leaders of the farmers market to continue doing what they're doing, and also to continue their work to grow and expand that.
Mr. Law?
Well, I certainly agree that the farmers market is a big benefit to the city of Saline, and I think that's where Mayor Driscoll deserves some kudos for helping to create and lead. Certainly Nancy Crisp, who's in the audience, certainly deserves a lot of the credit as well to leading that charge for the farmers market. It brings out a lot of people. It is where the people like to meet, congregate, talk, discuss what's happening for the weekend or on a Tuesday. It's great because it now expands into this building on the winter time, and I think it is a welcoming feature for the city. I would like to see it where it is has a permanent area as well, but I would like to see it maybe move from the parking lot that it is now on the Saturdays, so then that those spaces are freed up for those businesses that prior to the lunchtime rush will be able to enjoy the customers to find a place to park in that area. perhaps, I don't know where, but I certainly agree that there should be a permanent facility or some sort of an area where maybe there's a space we could rent or the farmer's market could rent in a building that's vacant. Certainly there's, I'm sure, a few of those around that we could find, or this farmer's market could find, that could serve their needs, and at little cost.
Mr. Marl, thank you. So, next question. What are your expectations as mayor responding to all citizens' comments? Mr. Law?
Expectations of all citizens' comments. My expectations are, well, certainly to have them heard, to have them considered and weighted and respected. It's a two-way street. I believe that citizens have to be respectful when addressing council, and council has to be respectful when addressing, if at all, those comments or related to that. I believe, as I said many times, an empowered citizenry, I want them to come out to council meetings. I want them to come out to commission meetings and speak out and say what's on their mind. I mean, that's what we're there for. We're there to listen to them. We're there to take in what they are concerned about. I mean, that's probably the major role of an elected official, as a council member or as a mayor. So my expectations are that respect's a two-way street. Why I'm answering this way, that's the way I answer it, because, and from my years on council, it has been, for the most part, very respectful, and I'm proud of that.
Mr. Marl?
Well, again, community leadership is not meaningful without honest and consistent feedback from the citizens that we represent. And I would revert back to my track record on council during the past 4 years. People know that if they have a question, they have a concern, or they want to talk about a municipal issue, that they are welcomed and encouraged to call me, email me, or stop me on Saturday morning at the farmer's market or in the grocery store and articulate their thoughts. And more than just listening, I believe that I'm responsive. And so that's the same approach that I would follow as mayor. People would be encouraged to contact me, agree or disagree. You'd be encouraged to contact me, and I think that you'll find that I'm a good listener and a good advocate.
Mr. Lawman?
Well, certainly I'm open and I'm available at any moment. At a drop of a hat, come in and discuss with me or give me a call and let me know what's on your mind. As mayor, I think that's incumbent on any mayor to do that. It's what they're there for, to listen to what people have to say, bad, good, or indifferent.
All right, we have our final question of the night before we listen to closing comments from our candidates. Final question, and taking it easy on you, by the way. What do you hope to accomplish in your first year as mayor of Saline? Mr. Marl?
My first year as mayor of Saline. Is it just one thing we hope to accomplish, or is it infinite?
What do you hope to accomplish? And if you can do infinite things, let's
Okay, well, I don't think I can do infinite things. I'll leave that to God. But I do hope to move forward and accomplish a few things. One, and I talked about this earlier, is empowering our 3 economic development boards, EDC, TIFA, and LDFA, to draft a cohesive economic development plan to reward existing businesses, but also to provide incentives and tools to bring private sector dollars to Saline. That's one big thing. The other big thing is, as mayor, I would hope to partner with council in reaffirming our commitment to public safety. Again, public safety is so key, it's so basic, it's so fundamental. And I want to make sure that those men and women on the front line have the resources and tools they need to do their jobs, but of equal importance, that they know that they have a mayor and a council that support them and encourage them. So those are probably the 2 big things. I think, as I also mentioned earlier, I would convene issue-specific task forces to look at some long-term systemic problems in our community, in the hopes that those task forces could work in a cooperative way with council and hopefully adopt some policies, some proposals to moving forward and addressing these problems. I think that's what I'm going to say for that question, Scott.
Thank you. Mr. Love?
Well, I think it's very simple. What I hope to accomplish as my first year as mayor is steering and helping to steer the city through the possible economic storm. Well, make no mistake, it will be an economic storm, I'm sure, of some magnitude over the coming year. I believe that I have the ability and the confidence to do that with my fellow council members. I mean, we work together as a team, and I'm very proud during my almost 8 years on council that I was a member of a great team. Council members came and went, but it always was the one goal I found in mind, that we worked and we tried to do what was the best for the citizens of Saline. My goal is also to make sure that I hear from all people. I hear from anyone and everyone who wants to come forward and say what's on their mind, to have input on government decisions, because folks, it's your city government. It's up to you to be able to voice your concerns. And as mayor, I want to make sure that that is possible and that's achievable and that's going to happen. And within that first year, I want and hope that an active citizenry is more apparent by the end of the year.
Thank you. Mr. Marl, a minute?
Yeah, let me expand on my answer just a bit, Scott. I think it's incumbent upon whomever is mayor in 2013 and whoever is on council then to keep this city on a strong fiscal financial footing and lead us again. I hate to use the phrase, but I think it's really appropriate, this minefield that we currently find ourselves in. And that means exploring consolidations and partnerships and scrutinizing every single line item in that budget to see if there's room for cost savings and improved efficiencies. I'll reiterate just one more time. We face a whole host of challenges. Most of them are economic and financial. But folks, through hard work, through articulating a clear and consistent vision and moving forward on this vision, we will weather this storm, and Saline's best days are ahead, not behind.
That concludes the question and answer portion of the evening. There are a handful of questions that did not get asked tonight. We will make those available to the candidates. Of course, questions and answers aren't done overall. I encourage everyone, whether they be here today or watching on the television or out reading the papers, to get involved, to contact the representatives here this evening, ask your questions, get your answers. That's when government works. Events like this and candidates such as this. We will now have closing discussion. Each candidate has 1 minute. Mr. Law, you have your 1 minute.
Well, I want to quickly thank CQC as well as you, Mr. Lem, for moderating this event, and CQC for sponsoring it. Also, Scott Graydon for helping to make these facilities available to us, and the microphones and such. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will take in consideration the differences between myself and my opponent. And those differences, well, you may seem like, well, I don't know if they're really clear, but they are clear to me. Then again, I echo, I bring the real life or real world experience with me. That being working in the private sector, working with kids in the public sector as an educator. I bring double the amount of city council experience that my opponent has. I also have the family that I've helped raise with my wife in Saline. My daughter's going to go to college next year. And I know that many of you who had kids that went through college, or those of you who have kids that are about to go to college, know the amount of money that's going to take to get that and to make that happen. I know it's troubling and it can be difficult, but I hope I can succeed as mayor in that regard, as helping to lead the city. Thank you.
Mr. Merrill, you have a few extra seconds on yours.
Bless your heart. Well, let me first thank you, Scott, and CQC for organizing this, and Mr. Law for joining me here this evening. But again, most importantly, thank you all for joining us. I think the choice in this election is clear. I'm the candidate who can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm 100% committed to this community. I'm the candidate who has a clear and consistent vision, but just as important as that vision, the proven ability to take a vision from concept to reality. And again, I'm focusing on five key points, that I know are crucial to Saline's long-term success. This race is about leadership and who is best equipped to move Saline forward in the years to come. As I said at the beginning of the statement, the choice is clear, but the decision is yours. I humbly ask for your vote and your confidence on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you both.